Welcome one, welcome all to the Snail Trail 4x4 podcast. If you like going off-roading in Toyotas, wrenching on Toyotas, camping in Toyotas, and maybe even poking a little bit of fun at Toyotas, and of course, hearing about how fantastic Moab is in Toyotas, then this is the podcast for you. That's right, ladies and germs. My name is Tyler, and joining me yet again, another episode, part B, the do.
I don't know. Don't speak French.
Anyways, that's that good looking dude over there, Mr. Jimmy James Black, again here with us on Snail Trail 4x4. How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for having me once again. How are you?
Doing pretty good. I'm feeling better. Better from everything that I had going on the past couple days. Yep. So this is part 2 of our cruise Moab journey for the event there. We had a lot going on. We had some fun stories that came out of the week. So the episode went on a little long, so we split it into 2. And this is day 2, which is not necessarily day 2 or the second half of the week. We did it in a weird order this time, but
yeah, we did.
You guys will figure it out. If you listen to part 1, you'll know what's coming here for part 2. So yeah, we had a lot of fun. I don't know, not much else to say, I guess, other than should we just jump right in, or do we want to give any updates for housekeeping stuff?
Let's just say that, awesome donated gift this month from MORRFlate. They've got their new compressors coming out has the pressure cutoffs on them. So you can set your pressures when you're airing up and it'll stop automatically for you, which is really cool.
Yeah, PSI Pro.
Thanks for the name. Link, once that website is up and running, the link will be in the description, so you can go and sign up and get on the pre-sale list there. And and I think so. Appreciate that. That's our giveaway for May. And get ready for the months to come. Tool month will be coming up.
Sweet. I like it. I guess without further ado, let's head right on over back into Cruise Moab. So we'll be right on back. Grab your favorite drinks as always. And part 2 of how Cruise Moab went.
Are you tired of landing in potholes and bouncing off obstacles? To play at your full potential, correctly tuned coilovers allow you to float over the rocks and gain more traction. At 4Wheel Underground, our full suspension systems include custom-tuned coilovers for your specific application. To learn more, visit 4wheelunderground.com.
So my Thursday was Posien Spider. And, I did Posien Spider with you when we did the trifecta, but I've never done Posien Spider, just sort of the lollipop that it is, to go out to an overlook and turn around and come back to the main trail and then drive the main trail out. So there was a good section of this trail that I did not do. There was a different route, right, to kind of loop you around to get back to the trail than what we did last time. So it was kind of fun. It was, a lot of the trail that we've done before. And it was fun to go out with tour guide Taco. Brian was one of the leaders, or was the leader.
Yep.
And then our buddy Lee was on that trip, and Lee Lim from Cruising Camp, and Josh, who's drives the other 90s Toyota pickup on the long travel kit on 35s or something like that, was on this section. And I don't remember if anybody else was on there.
Yeah, I was a little jealous of you guys on Thursday. I was like, that sounds like a fun group to be going out on doing Posien Spider with.
Yeah, it definitely was. So tour guide Taco was taking point, and Josh was actually our gunner. But then Brian asked me to hang near the back and look over these other people that were there. And then Lee Lim was between Josh and I. So like it was Josh, Lee, me, and in the back of this train, just kind of hanging out.
So you guys are having the party time back there while Brian's doing all the work at the front.
Exactly. Brian was doing all this work, leading the group, and then we'd go off and play on something and then catch back up to the group, because it wasn't the group wasn't going terribly fast. Yep. There was a guy on this group that had like an 85 4Runner.
Okay.
He told Brian when we were like all getting together and doing our, the group talk before we take off on the trail. He's like, yeah, I've actually guided this trail like handfuls of times, 12 to 20 times. Oh, geez. He's like, so if you need any help, let me know. And it was so funny because we had our own private channel. And then there was the group channel, right? And there was a lot, and that day, everybody was like on FRS, but we were on, we had a group channel on Ham, and the guy kept coming on and telling Brian how to do things and how to lead and what obstacles were. And if we were going to stop at a certain spot or, which direction, are you guys going to go left here and go to this opposite, go over this way? Or are you going to go right over here and just do a kind of shorter route, and then Brian would come over on our private channel and be like, if this guy wanted to lead the trail, like, why isn't he leading the trail? Why, Cruise Moab is hurting for trail leads. Yeah. And if this guy has led the trail so many times and is just out here on a joyride, why isn't he leading the trail? Like, what the heck? He's like, they begged me to lead this trail because they need help people leading the trails.
Yeah. They didn't have anybody to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so funny. It was like, this guy was being the tour guide, and Brian was kind of like, okay, whatever, just like leading the train while this guy's doing some of the talking, but it was coming over the mics being like, this is ridiculous. Like, who's this guy? Why is he taking over my role? But yeah, it was a fun time. We had a good time on the trail. There's some good obstacles coming up the hills, and I did one on the switchbacks at the very beginning. There's some rocky ledges that I went up, and there was, some of the harder lines up to like the waterfall area. That was fun. And I drove up the hard line in the waterfall, and everybody, like, there was a few people like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I just like climbed up this wall and, just drove over it, and everybody's like, whoa, that was crazy. And then, there was when we met Glenn from, I think is it RTF, Rubicon Trail Foundation, Glenn or
Glenn White?
Yeah. Is that his last name? I don't know his last name.
Yeah. With the FJ40, the red one.
Yeah. 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 His son was out in Moab with us, and it was on Posien Spider that same day, and we all pulled over at the top of the waterfall, and these really nice 3 Jeeps went through, and his son was in a YJ, just built up huge YJ, and went through, and I was like, Brian even told me, he's like, that's Glenn's son from the Rubicon. And so I ran up and I introduced myself and said hi to him.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Glenn wasn't there. His son wasn't
there. His son was there. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. And then from there, you kind of bounce along a little ways. And we went to the Wedgie, which is that crack.
Oh, that Lee rolled in last year.
That Lee almost flopped in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, Lee, you going to do this again? He's like, I don't know. And I'm like, you should do it, man. You need to conquer this. You need to gain more experience of driving like on edge and feeling what's going to happen with your vehicle. And Adam, who was the co-pilot for Brian, was there kind of leading people through it if they needed help. Okay. And so I got on the radio and I told him, I'm like, I don't want any guidance, and Lee behind me doesn't need any guidance unless he really gets himself into a pickle. And then Lee's like, no, I want you to tell me where to go. And I'm like, no, don't help him. He needs to figure this out.
Yeah.
And so I went through and I told Lee, I'm like, watch my tire placement. I'm longer than you, but you're going to do more or less the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I went through, and then Lee went through, no problems. He did fine. From there, it was just, there's a few other climbs, and then you come to the fast pace stuff up the top. We didn't stop at the grave this time, like we didn't last time either. Mm-hmm. And then you drop down, and there's these really steep, the 3 options of these really steep drops, which on the way back, they're really steep climbs. But since I was at the back and I had some free time, because all these people were going down the easier ones or the easiest one, I went down the middle one, but then I turned and I went up the hard line and made it up no problem.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was pretty fun. And then went back down. And then caught up to the group, and we went out, pretty much drove all the way out to the overlook. No problem. Had a good time out there. Had a great lunch, got to walk around, see some of the things. Then on the way back, it was fairly uneventful. But then tour guide Taco was like, hey, I'm going to try this hard line. I heard you did the hard line. And I said, yeah, go ahead. And so he made it up. And then when I got back to that location, I attempted it again, and I couldn't make it up for whatever reason. Yeah, I don't know what it was. But then Glenn's son and his 2 friends were behind me. And I was like, I tried 2 or 3 times and I was like, one more time. And I tried again. And it was like my worst attempt. But I was like, okay, I said one more, I'm backing off. They can hit it. And I was backing off. And the guy that pulled up next to me was like, you were so close one of those times. You almost made it. And I was close. But then once the vehicle started hopping, I just was like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to break anything. I don't want to have any problems.
That's a smart thing to do, Jimmy. Unlike some other people that I know.
Thanks.
Me. I'm raising my hand.
Yeah. These guys had big tires and big engines, and they would like idle up to it and then just romp on the throttles.
Yeah, and links, so they're not wrapping axles. Yeah.
Yep. And would just sliding on the rock back and forth, working their way up until they just hit something and it just popped them up and over. Yeah, it was so funny to watch. They just attack it differently. Like I needed to do the Moab bump, and they just like use the throttle to throw them. Yeah, they use. It's interesting when you have sticky tires, right? I'm sure they had stickies or a softer compound tire. When you get them and start heating them up, like the goal of almost off-roading is to have enough horsepower to spin your tires so that you can sit there and heat them up, so that then you can actually then start kind of throttling back on your throttle so that they can start grabbing once they're heated up and soft. So yeah, it's a really interesting strategy to be able to play around with when you're out there like that. Yeah. The Yokohamas did great though throughout the day. They were fine. I think I was there down to like 7 or something. Not crazy low, but low enough. Mm-hmm. And I did every obstacle for the difficult line on every obstacle, except for that line I made once, but couldn't make it again for, I don't know what the temperature got warmer, less humidity in the rock, or I don't know what it was, just denied me at that moment. People had already gone through later in the day and left more rubber dust on it. Yeah. Well, Lee was trying to go through it right before me, and his bumper was digging holes. I'm going to blame it on him that he just made it a little bit steeper, like whatever, 1/4 of an inch steeper, that it screwed me up. I don't know, man. He dug a pretty big hole with that bumper. I saw the pictures. So yeah, he had a good time. So, and then on the way back, we were fairly smooth. We were just cruising along. I don't think anything eventful happened, except we hit a traffic jam of vehicles coming both ways. And then there was that really rocky climb on the switchbacks, and Brian went down the really hard line, and he's kind of called me out, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll do that hard line. And so one of the guys was there, and I was just coming down the line, and he's like, you sure you want to do that? I'm like, well, are both my tires going to drop at the same time? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm going for it. And he's like, cool, we're good. Yeah. Dropped off of it and landed on the frame and the sliders and slid forward and drove out of it. And he's like, that's nuts, dude. And so that guy was driving an old school 40. And so I think his would have like rolled at that moment because of the short wheelbase forwards. Yeah. Yeah. We all got down to the bottom fine and aired up and we're driving out. And then that 40 actually had, his wheel, the lug nuts were coming loose off of a wheel. And then later we found out, because we all stopped, a bunch of us stopped and see if we could help. And he's like, I'm just going to leave it here, go get my truck and trailer, bring it all back, load it up on the truck and trailer and bring it back to camp and not drive it anymore. We're like, okay, cool. So somebody drove him back into town. He got all that settled away. Later, I saw the guy, because that night was vendor night. And so I saw him at vendor night and I said, how's the rig? And he was like, it's all messed up. The lugs are messed up. The wheels messed up, but I've got a spare and now I'm just looking for lugs. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm sure there's some lugs around here. He's like, well, I've got mini truck lugs because I put mini truck hubs on there so I could run the disc brakes. And I was like, oh, I might have some. Yeah. And so I dug through my parts bin. I didn't have any, unfortunately. Later I saw him and he found them and then he put the lugs through the hub assembly. And he said they were just spinning inside of there. And so he's like, I don't know what's wrong. And I'm like, well, there's either two things that are wrong. One, the splines are fucked, or you're not using mini truck lugs. Yeah. one of those two. Yep. So I don't know what the outcome was overall for him. with that. But vendor night was fun. I had a good time at vendor night. Saw a lot of people. A lot of people came by and said hi. A lot of people were asking me MORRFlate questions, and I kept pointing them over to you. But I did have the MORRFlate set up on Bobcat there, and I had the tailgate out and had a bunch of stickers and koozies out for grab, and hung out there and got to see some fun faces, fun participants, and a lot of vendors that we got to hang out with. I got to talk to Ben from Blue Ribbon Coalition for a good chunk of time, and I went to talk to Joe from Carnage Welder. It was fun to actually see both of them in person, face to face, which we've only ever talked to them virtually. So it was nice to get to meet them.
Yeah, that was cool. Vendor night was a lot of fun. I felt kind of bad because there was, some Cruise Moab and people that we see each year, right? The repeats that we've gotten to know. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of kept getting pulled aside and talking with them, like Rob, Josh came by, Brian, Hans, a few other people kept coming by. And so I was talking with them, and so the secretary ended up being like talking to everybody about the MORRFlate stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
But it was really neat, getting to meet Joe finally from Carnage, Welder, and, Ben from Blue Ribbon, get to shake his hand. And then I also met, and talked with Brian Ellinger from, Diamond Axle.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Who made my axle housings. Right. Mm-hmm. So I was chatting with him a little bit and got to say hi, and told him a little bit more about how the axle build was coming along. And he goes, dude, that's crazy. That's some big axles you're building. I was like, yeah, it's going to be fun. He goes, didn't you order those like 2 years ago from me? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, I remember when I was talking with you about it, I figured that you were just going to be fighting it every step of the way. And I was like, yeah, I pretty much did, but I'm happy I did it because I learned a lot. And I figured out a new way to kind of put an axle together in a way that I think is kind of fun and uses some really cool components. So he goes, cool. Yeah. As long as you see it as that way rather than a frustration because you're fighting it the whole way, then that's what it's good for. And I was like, cool. That's exactly what I was doing. He goes, cool. So it was fun to talk with those guys, see everybody out at vendor night. Lee made MORRFlate some green Max Trax, like his little mini Max Trax bottle openers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so he made a bunch of them, and I was going to sell them.
Okay.
And I was going to sell them at vendor night and, sell them on the website and everything. And so the secretary put a bunch of them out like on the bumpers for the Bronco, because the Bronco's body is pretty much all aluminum, the body panels, except for the rear quarter panels. The rear quarter panels are steel. Everything else is aluminum. I don't know why it is that way, but I'm not going to complain. So she put a bunch of the magnetic bottle opener Max Trax out, and people just started taking them. Yeah.
I heard that from Lee as well, because he had his table out, and he had like the mini Jerry cans and those Max Trax and then a few other things. And he said a lot of people came by and just took them.
Yeah.
Like just like these things on the table are all free, which isn't the case, but it's sort of I guess, I don't know if we need to make signs or something, because everything on my table was free, right? I had stickers and koozies out there. Feel free, take them. Right. But you guys had product out there. Yeah. You had items out there, and people just assumed that they were on the table, so they were free. So they were taking them, which I thought was very odd.
I thought it was odd too, but after a while I just kind of went with it, and I just started handing them out to people that asked too. So I was like, whatever, we'll have these be a giveaway item. And they're a really fun giveaway item. People love them. So, we just kind of rolled with it. I was like, whatever. Mm-hmm. So, vendor night was cool. I got to meet and talk with one of the Toyota people as well that I met out at SEMA.
Awesome.
Which was fun. So Toyota Corporate was there at Cruise Moab, and I got to reconnect with one of the guys I met out at SEMA. So that was a lot of fun. Steve, if you're listening, hi again. And we also, turns out, the Toyota Untold podcast.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Tyler on that podcast.
Yeah.
She was out there.
Yeah. Didn't you met them on Dead Man Springs Day, right?
I did. And I didn't put 2 and 2 together until you mentioned it. You're like, that was probably Tyler from the Toyota Untold podcast. I was like, oh, you're totally right. I totally missed that. Didn't put those together. So that was funny, figuring that out later on. And so anyways, we're going to be talking with them. I have contact info for them. So we're going to get some, I think some fun updates and interviews in the future for Snail Trail 4x4 regarding things that Toyota does.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be fun.
Exciting.
Other than that, vendor night was fun. I thought it was kind of funny when I showed up, they were like, yeah, pretty much you, Delta, solve function and Snail Trail 4x4 has this entire row.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. So we can kind of just set up however we want to. And he goes, yeah, pretty much just take up the entire row and set up however you guys want. I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we did.
That's what we did.
Yep.
We even had space left over and I went up and I told the guy and I was like, hey man, there's like another 10 by 20 space at the end of us. And if somebody, if there's a vendor that's outside, that's like, wants to come inside, there's ample room here for somebody if you want to let him in. And that's what, and I said, I don't know, I haven't seen Stellar Built in here yet. And so if he shows up and he wants to come in and you can throw him next to us, that's no problem. He's like, yeah, Stellar Built's not even really signed up for anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, I saw their rig in town. And so I messaged them seeing if they wanted to come by, but I haven't heard anything. And then probably like half an hour later, I see Dimitri driving in with their the corporate cruiser.
Yeah.
And I was like, where are you going? And I was like, there's plenty of room right here. You can park next to us. And he's like, no, they want us to park over this way. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
But yeah. That was the only time for the most part that I saw Dimitri was that I saw him twice that night and that was it. He was doing it. Saw him when he drove in and he was walking around and I spoke to him for like 15 minutes. And then I was like, gotta go talk to somebody else. See ya, buddy.
Yep. Same. So yeah, that was vendor night and Thursday. So it sounds like you guys had a fun time out at Posien Spider. Any carnage at all from anybody in our group?
No, nobody in our group. I think we all did fine that day.
Cool.
Lee maybe got some extra bangs and dings on his bumpers, but nothing unusual there.
What's new? Yeah. Okay, cool. So what about Saturday? How was Rusty Nail? And then we can go back to Friday, Metal Masher.
Do Friday as a combined thing. Sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. So Rusty Nail was the hardest trail I did. Cruise Moab rates it a 9. Moab rates it an 8. So I'll take it out. Take whatever way you want to do. I think I was checking it out on some other apps and they had it rated as an 8 as well. But Rusty Nail was a fun trail. It definitely was a challenge. It's the first time that I've ever really come across an obstacle that I couldn't conquer, and it was mainly a wall that I couldn't drive up and had to get winched. And so I've had this sort of internal thing going on that I'm never really going to add a winch until I really need a winch. And so now I've actually, for the most part, needed a winch. Brian was able to winch me up it and winched a bunch of people up it because nobody made it up that obstacle. Nobody in our group made it up that obstacle.
Yeah.
But let's see. So let's back up just a hair. There was 5 vehicles that went on the trip. There was Bobcat. There was Brian Flynn, tour guide Taco, 17 Offroad. And then there was the the actual trail leader, Justin, who had an FJ40 that's been stretched, linked, and was a biodiesel. Okay. Yeah. And then there was Casey, who's a guy from like Fresno, Visalia area. I don't know where he's exactly from, somewhere in the Central Cal area. And he had an 80s second gen mini truck, single cab with like a flatbed set up on it. Yeah. And then who was the last guy?
Did Josh go with you guys that day?
Then it was Josh. Thank you. Yeah, Josh in the other mini truck, 35s, independent front, long travel, with a locker in the rear, and ARB up front.
I'm impressed that Josh went.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I think I'll say this now because I'll probably forget, but at the end of the trail, he said, I'm super impressed that this truck was able to do this. And I was considering solid axle swapping it, but maybe I'm just going to upgrade the IFS to beefier and stronger components and more or less leave the truck alone because it's good as is.
It does awesome out in Moab, man. The way he has that truck set up and like looking at it and looking at the front suspension and everything, you're like, this thing's going to fall apart on the first trail we go on. And he drives it like a champ every single year. Yeah. I'm always impressed with what he does with that truck.
Yeah. At the end of the trail, when we were kind of on the flatter section, I got to drive it around a little bit. And it's so soft. It's like a couch, man. It's like a boat. It's like sways. It kind of floats. You hit a bump and it's pretty smooth. Cause I got to drive Lee Lim's cruiser when we did Metal Masher too. And but Josh's pickup truck is even softer than that one was.
Interesting.
It was pretty crazy. And so I can't imagine though, doing some of these obstacles in that soft of a setup, like that truck's made to Baja, right? Like that, it's made to go fast, but it crawls so well too. But so let's see, those are the 5 rigs. We also had Andy from I think he's the president. Did you know Andy? It was his Not Your Mama's LX or Not Your Mama's, what's his Instagram handle?
Not Your Mom's LX 470, I think.
450. Yeah. 450. Not Your Mom's LX 450. Andy, I believe he's the president of the Rising Suns 4x4 Club.
Oh, okay. Then I do know who he is.
Yeah. He was with, he rode with Brian and his son rode with Brian. And his son said the joke that is at the end of this episode.
Okay.
That's where it came from.
Nice.
Anyways. And then Adam, who is Brian's co-pilot when we did Posien Spider, rode with Josh. And then Justin, who drove the FJ40, had his brother riding with him. I don't know his name. So there was more people than there were vehicles. Right.
Okay.
So anyways, you start at the Gooneyberg parking lot area where we started Metal Masher. We drove in past Gooneyberg Rock, and then where the road winds and you head up the hill to go to Metal Masher, we turned left and went out that way. And we actually started driving out Gold Bar Rim towards Metal Masher or towards Rusty Nail. And then there's a spot out there where you turn off of Gold Bar Rim and you head out to Rusty Nail. Okay. And then heading out that way, there was a few uphill like ledges and a few downhill ledges. And it was, for the most part, it was pretty simple until you got to like these 2 steps and then this wall to climb up. And I think the wall is called the wall. And then, I forgot there was 2 ledges before that. Then there was even another optional ledge. And I tried the optional ledge just because it was more of a straight shot. And if I could get up over the first undercut ledge, then it would have been super easy for me, but I couldn't pop up and over it. I couldn't get around it. So I went the other way. Brian was already heading up the other way. I was just playing around. I said, I'm going to go play on that one while you guys, because that's the easier way. See if we can, if you guys can figure that out. And if I can get up this, then that's one thing, but then I'll turn around. And if I don't make it, I'll go up that other way. So Brian went up. It took him a few tries, and then we figured out sort of the lines to get everybody up. And then I failed on the optional line and went up to the other ledges and drove up those no problem. Got like first attempts, little Moab bump, popped right up and over. The second ledge, you actually had to drive past the ledge and out onto this rock and I had to reverse back and turn so that I got a better line at the ledge and then drive up the ledge from there, which was kind of an interesting, you're driving out to this abyss kind of thing. Not a very big cliff, but it was like, there was a drop there.
Okay.
And then we got everybody up those 2 ledges, and then we were going to attack the wall. And right as we were about to start, these 3 motorcycles came up, and we're like, are those motorcycles going to drive up the wall? And yeah, they did. The first guy made it up all the way to the top. No problem. The second guy failed about halfway, and he's like, I'm going to do it again. I can make this. And the third guy got like 80% up and then fell off his bike, but then they caught the bike right, and pulled it the rest of the way up.
Okay.
And then the guy that went second, that now is going again, he made it all the way to the top, but ended up doing like this big wheelie and spun his bike around, and it fell down at the top of the rock. But he made it up.
Okay.
So, but we spent a solid at least half an hour, if not a little longer, just waiting for the motorcycles to get out of our way.
Yeah.
Before we went up that. And then they watched us go up it because they're like, you guys are crazy. You're going to drive up this wall. We're like, no, you guys are crazy.
You're in the motorcycles trying to get up this thing.
So Brian attacked it, didn't make it to the top. While the motorcycle guys were doing it, they already went up there with some ropes and set anchors and everything in case Brian didn't make it. Then he had a winch point. So he winched himself up it. Then I attacked it and I didn't make it. So then he pulled me up it. And then that's pretty much how it went for everybody else. Everybody else attempted it at least once. I think except for Josh. Josh sort of just turned himself and put his tires up there and said, okay, pull me.
Winch me.
Winch me. There's nobody else made this. I'm not going to make it.
Okay.
Justin, who was in the 40, attempted it a few times, didn't quite make it. And Justin and Andy were saying that they were out there 2 years ago or maybe 3. And the hole at the bottom of that wall was 2 to 3 feet higher. So
wow.
And so they're like, yeah, we made it up. No problem. In like in an 80 series and the 40. And we just popped up this wall, but now because it's so much deeper, it's just becoming even more difficult. So that was pretty tough. That section was pretty tough. Let's see, from there, it wasn't far to no left turn, which but getting to no left turn is what would have screwed you up, because there's all these rolling ledges and they're all leaning towards a wall or a cliff off to the left. Right. And the reason it's called
like
no
Moab
left turn,
rim?
like it was like Moab rim, but it was a little, I don't know. I would have almost said it's a little worse than Moab rim.
Oh, geez.
But
okay.
Bobcat did it fine. And I'm super stoked that I lowered the rear end a little bit to get over that. But I led up into it totally like comfortable. It was off camber, and it was, you are leaning off right to this cliff, but no left turn really is you drive out onto this huge rock that if you don't look at it, if you don't pay attention, you get somewhat comfortable with it. But if you look at it, the rock is just completely over the cliff. So you're driving on this rock, out onto this rock you had to turn right and like do a 3-point turn. I did, at least because I'm so long, that and the whole my whole rig was over the edge of the cliff on this rock, which is completely nuts. And then no left turn from there. I didn't think it was that difficult of an obstacle. I felt that it was more difficult on those ledges that were off camber getting to no left turn than it was actually doing the no left turn obstacle.
Okay.
Yeah. But so you drop down no left turn. It's just a pretty steep little wall. And then you end up in this like V, and you have to keep passenger side high. And then you drive up on these rocks on the driver's side. And then you have to, when you're driving right at like pretty much another wall, and then you turn hard driver. And the goal is to have pretty much both the tires drop off the wall at the same time, because then it's going to kick your entire body and vehicle passenger side and into the wall. But if you're dropping both the tires off at the same time, it doesn't kick you as hard into the wall. But if you drop passenger side tire first, then you're going way into the wall, right? Because your whole vehicle's leaning that way. Yeah. But I went so high on passenger side that my driver tire fell off first. Oh. And I probably lifted my rear tire off the ground. I couldn't see it in the video or anything, but I was like 1.5 feet away from the wall, and it was plenty of room, and I made the corner fine. And yeah, so I felt that leading up and the off camber rollers were way more difficult than the actual obstacle. Okay. And it was funny because Casey, and he has the 80 series pickup, late 80s, second gen pickup. He's shorter wheelbase. He was like 105 or something like that. Mm-hmm. He was way worried about the off camber rollers. At one point he's like, strap me. Like, I want you guys to get on a strap and hold me, because this does not feel good. And then once we got him to the no left turn, he's like, yeah, I got this. This part's easy, you know? So,
yeah.
And that was for the most part, once we got through that's the extent of the trail for the most part. There was a few spots where there was one other spot that you would have absolutely hated. It was just an off camber ledge drop, right? And you're already off camber and then you're turning into it and you have to go down this hill, and it really did feel a little wonky, but I watched the 80 series go, or the 40 series go over it. And then I was next and I was like, it's not that bad. And I got right to the point where I was about to drop and I was like, yeah, I don't like this. So I reversed and lined myself up a little bit more straighter and went down that fine.
Nice.
Casey did the same thing in his, he was right behind me. And then from there, it was up to Golden Spike. Or the Golden Crack. So we drove from there to the Golden Crack, and we went to look at the Golden Crack, and the group that was doing the trifecta was there, and they're all eating lunch and hanging out. And pretty much Justin came over the radio and was like, has everybody been to the Crack? And we're all like, yeah. And he's like, okay, we're going to not go and get in the middle of that mix.
Yeah.
You know, let's head down a little ways and we'll just stop and eat lunch. And so we drove out a little ways, stop and ate lunch. 2 buggies came by us in that amount of time. And then we drove out Golden Spike and hit Gold Bar Rim and continued on out and got to the waterfall, which is where the catastrophe happened last year. And I played on the rocks a little bit, and there just wasn't a good line on the rocks this year. So I just went up the waterfall, straight up it.
Okay.
And then I started to drive up the high left side, which is more flat and a little
like
off
a shelf.
Yeah, it's like a shelf that you can drive on. And then I said, no, I'm reversing down and I'm going through this crack right where Tyler broke. And I'm going to do it again and not break again and just to rub it in Tyler's face. And I totally made it through. Drove all the way through that thing, drove up that little wedge and parked almost in the same exact location as I parked last year, then I went back to help everybody else out. So I went through that crack again, Tyler.
Congratulations.
Once again. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then from there it was smooth sailing out. We got back to down the like rocky area and out the rest of Gold Bar Rim, and got down to the bottom, unlocked our hubs and drove like highway speeds through from down the sand washes and out past Goonieberg Rock and out pretty much all the way to the parking lot and aired up. So we had a good time. It was a short trail, but it took us almost 2 hours to go up the 2 ledges and the waterfall. And then there was maybe like a half an hour or so in there where we waited for the motorcycles. So that took a good chunk of time, but then the whole rest of it, I think we were done at like 2:30 or 3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like a really fun kind of good afternoon trip.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely was. That was a fun time. And then now going back a day, we did Metal Masher.
Yeah, the Friday run was the MORRFlate Metal Masher run. So this one was kind of funny because the trail leader, Tim, came up to me on Thursday night at the vendor night and was like, hey, just introducing myself. I'm leading the Metal Masher run tomorrow that you guys are sponsoring. So I just want to say hi and, let me know if there's anything that you wanted to do on the run. I was like, no, I think it's going to be kind of fun. I was like, I know that there's a lot of people that we kind of know that are in our group that are going to be on that run. So I'm not sure how many quote unquote, cruise Moab participants are going to be there versus how many it's just going to be like the friends of MORRFlate and Snail Trail 4x4 and kind of hanging out. And so he goes, okay, cool. I guess we'll see you in the morning. And so he goes, yeah, we have, I think, 9 vehicles, he said, that we had planned for the trip. And then I started doing the math in my head and I was like, so we have you and me, we had Lee, we had Will, we had Morgan. Yep. So that's 5. And then we had Tim, the leader, the trail lead. That's 6. And there was one other one I think that we knew. And then there was the tail gunner and the one person we didn't know pretty much. And then, and then Joe came out too.
Yeah. We invited Joe from Carnage Welder to come out and come play with us that day.
Yeah. So I remember, I think at one point, either vendor night or the Friday morning, I remember looking at you thinking, this poor trail lead, it's just going to turn into us going around and doing whatever we want. He's just going to be trying to control the chaos.
Pretty much how it came down.
Yep, pretty much. So it was fun because the guy that we didn't know that showed up, that was Derek. He had just picked up a mini truck that was really well built.
Yeah.
On 38s and doublers and everything, dual cases. And he was pretty much down to try anything and everything. So
yeah,
he was a good person to kind of have in the mix for that trip. And then the trail lead and the tail gunner was just kind of like, what are these guys doing? So yeah, Metal Masher was a lot of fun. That was going to be kind of the test, in my opinion, for the Bronco.
Well, sure. It was the most difficult trail that it was doing.
Yeah, for the trip while we were there. But I was really kind of curious because I don't remember anything being super difficult in the Forerunner, but I do remember 2 spots in the Forerunner where it got a little off camber and I was like, I don't like this. And I had to choose a very specific line in order to keep the Forerunner from getting off camber. And so I was waiting for those 2 spots to come up in the Bronco. And I was able to do the off camber lines in the Bronco and not feel like at all concerned about the Bronco going anywhere.
Where were those 2 spots?
The turn coming into Mirror Gulch.
Yes. Okay.
So you kind of have to come down a little bit and then make the turn and come up. And it's kind of this weird downhill off camber turn.
Yep.
So that was one spot. And then the other spot was, where, I don't know how to put it. So there's like a big, just kind of a hill climb with a bunch of humps in it. And you came up where you almost rolled over on top of me.
Yeah. Okay. So leading up to that, right?
So up at the top of it where you went up the ledge and over on the side is like this turn that gets you all flexed out. But in order to turn as well, you're kind of have your passenger side down in this little gully and your driver's side is up on some rocks as you're making the turn.
I've never gone that way. I wouldn't know that spot.
Yeah. You always go up the ledge right there.
Yeah.
So when I went through that turn last year in the Forerunner, I was like, man, I don't like how tippy it got having to go up on the rocks to make the turn as tight as I was going. I remember when Rob was leading us last year going on that turn, I remember him at one point saying, "You're not going to roll. Do you trust me?" And like, I'd never said anything. So he must've been able to read it on my face.
Yeah.
What my face reaction was doing as I was taking the Forerunner through that turn. But taking the Bronco through it, I was really concerned about the tie rods, because you really have to kind of jam the steering into the rock in order to get the passenger side to start climbing as you're making the turn. And I was really concerned about the tie rods just buckling on the passenger side when it did it, but the Bronco did it no problem. And it never felt tippy at all. Everything felt grounded really well. So
it's really nice to have a lowered vehicle, huh?
For Moab, yes. I will not take the Bronco on the Rubicon or Fordyce because it'll get hung up on everything.
True.
Yeah, I mean, there was points where I was just kind of coming over a ledge or something and just kind of scraping along the skid plates of the Bronco to come down or come down a ledge or come up a ledge. So yeah, the Bronco definitely needs like 2 inches of ground clearance. So I think with some 37s and then 1 to 2 inch suspension lift, it'll be, I think, perfect for Moab. I think it can do, after doing Metal Masher, I think it can do the Rubicon just fine. I just won't take it because I have the Forerunner.
Sure. I get that.
Yeah. But I was very impressed with how well it did Metal Masher. I never felt like I struggled on any obstacle. I was able to do all the ledges that I did in the Forerunner. I did everything I did in the Forerunner. And I almost feel like the Bronco did it a little easier than the Forerunner. So I thought that was really interesting. My only concern that I was concerned about doing for Metal Masher was going to be Mirror Gulch in the Bronco.
That was my concern. Yep.
Yeah, because it's just a hefty ledge that you just kind of have to bump it. And I was like, I think I'm too low. I think I'm going to high center trying to come up the ledge. And so what I did was I got the front end up the ledge, and then I just kind of slowly rolled into the ledge to see if my frame or the lower link brackets on the frame side for the rear axle were going to get caught before my tires hit the ledge. And nothing hit before the tires. So after that, I backed up a little bit and just gave it a quick Moab bump and went right up without any issues at all. So nice. I was very impressed. I thought I was gonna have to sit there and spin tires and work at Mirror Gulch a lot more than I did. So
yeah, it sounds like you went up it easier than Joe did.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Joe in the Unimog on 43-inch. I don't know what boggers or
TSLs. The TSLs. Yep.
With not a whole lot of body panels left on that Unimog.
Yeah.
Had a little bit of trouble right there in Mirror Gulch.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he was probably goofing around, but he went really high driver going into it and then tried to bump up it. And when he did that, the whole vehicle just sloshed down into the little gulch there. And then he just tried to go straight up it and just had a hard time. And I think he just backed up a little bit one time and popped up it, no problem. And then I went up it and I slid out a little bit and had a little bit of a hard time there, but I got up at not too bad. It took me a split second.
Yeah.
And then Michael, who was the guy, the tail gunner behind me, had a really hard time getting up it.
Oh,
and
interesting.
He was in a Taco, right? He was in a third gen Taco. Yep. And he had a tough time, but he didn't know where his tires were, his front tires. I would be like, you're turned like hard passenger right now, right? And he's like, oh, I am. I was like,
interesting.
Straighten your tires, like turn, like straighten your tires out. I'm like, keep turning. You're not straight yet. Keep turning your tires. Wow. And he's like, I'm like, okay, there. Now you're straight. And he's like, okay. And then I think he backed up and attempted it again and he didn't make it. I'm like, okay, back up a little bit, turn passenger. All right, now go. And then he like popped up it, no problem.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But the Metal Masher is fun. I really like Metal Masher. It's one of my top picks of trails in Moab because there really is a choose your own adventure on that trail. There's a lot of places that are from mild to wild, right? There's lines like Joe was trying to take on that, like whatever that's called the mini Widowmaker or the really big first ledge.
Yep.
It's not actually Widowmaker. But that one, he's going up a wall and a rock pile at the same time and trying to go up it. That's a line I never even would have looked at.
Yeah.
I went up the hard wall. Lee tried going up the medium wall, didn't quite make it and moved over to the easier wall.
Nope. Lee got winched.
That's right.
Yep. To the Bronco.
Yep.
Woo.
And then Will tried going up it and didn't make it. And I think Will would have made it.
I think he would have too.
He just didn't stay in it long enough.
Yeah, he didn't give it enough time to work at it.
Yeah.
I think Will would have made it. He wasn't hung up on anything. It was just a matter of getting and finding traction.
Yeah.
So
Morgan went up the easier side or went up the second easiest side. You went up the absolute easiest way. Yep. Right. And that's just one obstacle. And that's almost that like array is almost every obstacle that you come to. There's an easy, medium, and a hard, if not an even easier than easy. Yep. So that's one of the reasons I really like Metal Masher. And that is there everywhere except for really Mirror Gulch, right?
Yeah.
Mirror Gulch is, this is your line. There's no bypass. There's no other way around it. You have to go right here.
Yep.
And you're either going to bottom out or you're going to make it.
Yeah. Yep. I really like it. I feel like, there's a lot of really cool lookouts in Moab. I really like that lookout up at the top of Metal Masher.
Okay.
I think more than the top of the world lookout. I think I like it more than the lookouts we did for Deadman Springs and Dome Plateau. I don't know why it is. It's a really cool spot right there at that lookout for Metal Masher. And it has some, like you said, awesome, fun obstacles that pretty much anybody, no matter what your capabilities are, can get on and have some fun and kind of test their abilities and test their limits. And then there's Ruck Chucker and Widowmaker for the extreme stuff, later on. And those are completely optional as well. And it's a really cool, like you said, it's a choose your adventure trail. So yeah, I enjoy Metal Masher each year. I think that one is turning into so far my favorite trail out there. So
yeah, definitely. We did watch Joe and Carnage Welder Joe drive up Rock Chucker in a different line than I've done. So that was kind of fun to see his buggy Mog get completely flexed out and twisted going up that thing. After just
chugged right through. Did you ever figure out what he's geared down to?
300 something.
Jeez.
350, 300 to 350, somewhere in there.
Yeah. But like he literally just kind of walked right up Rock Chucker without slipping a tire, without having to choose a different line. He pretty much walked right up, and it was really impressive to watch his buggy. And then what was also interesting to me was watching Joe try to get up a bunch of the ledges, which he had troubles with.
Sure.
And it just goes to show kind of the differences in vehicle build styles. Like the style of obstacle that Rock Chucker is, that's what Joe built that buggy for.
Right.
And that's what it excels at. And it did awesome. But then you watch it try and get up on some of the big ledges, and it just doesn't do as great because it doesn't have a ton of horsepower. It's a tall rig. So yeah, it was fun to just kind of watch the differences there.
Yeah, absolutely. Derek tried Rock Chucker and got on top of the rock, but couldn't really get up the wall after that. And got a little wonky, and we had to hold him over with a strap as he backed off. And I'm not sure if that scared him or if he was just like, nah, I'm done playing. Let's continue on.
Yeah.
And I tried to get up Rock Chucker, and I got denied this year. Kind of do the same line I did last year, but I don't know, maybe with the lower rear springs, it gave me I didn't have the flex, or I wasn't in the right spot, or whatever. It just didn't work out this year for me.
Yeah. I think you could have had it. We had you in a couple spots where I'm sure in the cab, it probably felt really weird, but it was literally the exact same thing that you were doing last year, where your front passenger tire comes way off of the ground.
Yeah.
Just before your front driver starts climbing again.
Sure.
That wall when it grabs and climbs. And we had you just to the point where you would just start grabbing and climbing on that driver's side, and then it would slip off, or you would fall off of that point, or like right at the end as you called it and you were like done, you were like on the point, you had it all lined up and you were starting to climb, and then like you just let off the gas or something real quick and you slipped off of it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, I'm done. And I was like, oh, but you were there. You were right on it. I was like, man, you had it.
But once I slid off the line, I was like, nah, I'm done. Yeah. Like I was there, and then I don't know. I couldn't get in gear or something happened. But yeah, once it slid off, I was like, all right, like I've played around enough. Let's get the train moving.
Yeah.
And then, so I was on 3 tires there, and then, went up that switchback wall where there's like a rock that sticks out, like a painted rock, and almost flopped Bobcat up there.
On me. That one?
Yeah. You freaked out. You're like, I'm going to catch you. I'm like, Tyler, what are you doing?
I was more trying to like put my hands out to help push myself backwards if the rig started rolling. Yeah. Because I was starting to jump backwards.
Sure.
Yeah.
I didn't roll. I don't even know if I hit my rock slider when I was tipping. I think I just had a wheel up in the air.
Yep.
And did you walk around and like pull my rock slider down? Is that what you did?
I walked over and grabbed onto your slider and just pulled it down.
Yeah. Leveled me out. And then my issue was I turned driver and I should have just stayed in at passenger. So I backed up a hair and lined back up and drove up and was just full cranked passenger and hopped up that ledge there and made it up. Mm-hmm. It was fun this time, I think, going out because we went out a different way. Yeah. Which was in different because I've done Metal Masher 2 times now, and it's always been the same route out past Gooneyberg Rock. And this time we turned right and we drove out to the Highway 113 and went out that way, which was a different route for me. So it was kind of neat to do something a little different.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Fun day, fun trip, really fun people that we were hanging out with all day. We ended up getting back out to Highway 313. And as soon as we hit the highway, you said that something was going on with Bobcat.
Yeah, there was a weird whining going on in the engine that I couldn't quite figure out. I was, didn't change.
Lee wasn't there with you?
No, he wasn't in the passenger seat this time.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, that was so on a good section of the way out. I got to drive Lee's rig there on some of the higher speed stuff, and he jumped in Bobcat and drove Bobcat for a little bit, and it was just that was different driving an automatic and an 80 and how heavy those are and how. Just the way that he's built his rig compared to as kind of more of an overlander compared to Bobcat, which is more of a rock crawler.
Yeah.
It was just a fun contrast of driving vehicles. Anyways, when was it 313 or 113? I don't remember what the highway was.
It was 313.
Okay.
Yeah. The first highway to get out back to the main one. Yeah.
So when we got to that, then we switched back rigs. We all aired up and I started leaving. And I was like, there's this weird screeching noise going on. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to figure it out. Couldn't quite determine what it was because it didn't change with speed. It did not change with RPMs. Everything like the engine sounded like it was running well. The transmission felt fine. I was at first I thought it might have been like a dust shield rubbing somewhere, sound, but it didn't really affect it a whole lot. And so I was driving back with this weird noise going on, just thinking the whole way of what it might be.
Yeah, and when you came over the radio, you're like, I have this weird noise. And we're like, okay, well, is it related to, does it change with RPM? You're like, no, not really. No. Okay, does it change with speed?
No.
You're like, no, not really. And we're like, what?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah.
It's not changing at all.
It didn't. It was this whining noise. Yeah. And I got back into Moab and I was driving by and then I saw Michael, who was our tail gunner at a gas station, and I pulled over to talk to him because when he introduced himself, he said that he's a local. He lives here in Moab and he's got a welder and a press if anybody needs it. Yep. And so I stopped and I was like, hey, I might need your welder or press here in a little bit.
Yeah.
And we exchanged numbers and he said, give me a call. And then he's like, I'm doing the trifecta. I'm gunning the trifecta tomorrow. So I've got to be up and out pretty early, but if you need it, let me know and I'll open the shop for you. And I said, cool. Got back to the house and I literally drove it right up onto the Clifford's trailer. Right. And I was like, yep. The truck might be done. If I turn this thing off, it might not start. I'm just going to put it on the trailer and we'll start diagnosing it from there. Yeah. And it wasn't too long after that. We all kind of were like, this is where the noise is coming from. And I don't know if it was Lee or who it was like, this is your issue. And
Lee spotted it.
Yeah. And it really was the pulley on my crankshaft for my alternator was wobbling around a lot when I was just idling. Yeah. And so we stopped the vehicle and it was not, the pulley was not in the correct spot in that area. It was like bouncing around between the front main seal or whatever that the front of the engine is right there, the timing case cover, and the other pulley, which does my power steering. It was kind of wobbling around in between there. Yeah. And so
like the pulley had become disconnected from the harmonic balance assembly.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm shocked that I was able to make it all the way home. Yeah. Because it was still spinning, but I don't think it was spinning nearly as fast as anything else. And I think the whining I was hearing was the part of the pulley had slipped backwards and was actually grinding itself into the front cover. I think the timing chain cover. Yep. It was like cutting itself into that cover. And I was like, that's bad.
Yeah. That could have been a lot worse if it had gotten into that more.
Yeah. Luckily it didn't cut all the way through. Yeah. I wasn't leaking any oil or anything. It just sort of ground down a section of it. Mm-hmm. We took the pulley off. We called around to all the auto parts stores in the area. Nobody had a pulley. I talked to a Toyota garage mechanic guy, and he said he has a 22 RE laying there, but it's closing time, and he won't be back until 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
and the next day. 10 o'clock the next day, which was, now that I'm thinking about it, that would have been Saturday. So I would have been shocked that he would even be there. But Yeah, so we pulled the whole thing apart. We did the breaker bar against the frame starter trick to break the bolt loose, and pulled it apart. And then, literally the whole thing came apart in my hands. It was kind of funny.
Fell apart.
Yeah.
The whole pulley just fell off of it.
There's so I didn't know about it, but there's like a rubber isolating ring between the pulley and the sleeve that goes over that section that gets pressed on to that section of the pulley mechanism contraption.
I think it's called the harmonic balancer assembly.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, I never knew there was like a rubber isolator in that section, but it makes sense, there would be. It would help isolate some of the vibrations or anything that's going on. Anyway, so what happened really was that either the rubber is so old it let go, or the adhesive got too hot and let go or something like that. But the rubber had separated itself from the sleeve that was pressed on in that area.
Yeah.
So Lee or you were like, well, let's weld it all back together. Lee's the mechanic in us, I guess. Yep. But yeah, so he's
the problem solver. He solves functions, man.
Yeah, he solves our function problems.
Yep.
So nobody was open, couldn't get a replacement part. The front of the vehicle was damaged, or the front of the engine was damaged, but it wasn't bad, it wasn't leaking anything. So we put it all back together. Lee hammered it down with like a brass hammer of his. We lined everything up as best as possible, and we pulled out a bun trail welder and pulled out some batteries and welded the thing back together as evenly and as spaced out as we could. And I think you did. Tyler welded it, and you did 8 tack welds on the back and 4 tack welds on the front.
Yep.
Yeah. And my logic was, well, a tack weld is stronger than a rubber piece.
Yeah.
So we don't need to fully weld the thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we welded it all back together.
Pretty much as long as it stayed semi-balanced, then it should hold great. As long as we got it balanced and we got that evenly spaced concentric as much as possible, which I tried to get it as concentric as possible. And and I think I tried more at that than keeping the tack welds as evenly spaced as possible.
Sure.
But got it all tack welded up, and everything kind of held together, and we put it back on the front of the engine, put the belts all back on, got everything tensioned properly. And we're like, well, does it start? How does it does? Let's see what it does when idling. And
and it didn't start.
It didn't start. Yeah.
I think the battery was ever so slightly low, because I think driving home, the pulley wasn't really turning the alternator that much. It was, but not enough to
keep everything charged.
Keep it charged. So it was slightly drained. So we did charge the battery up a little bit. And then it started right up, and I didn't really have any problems the rest of the weekend in regards to starting the vehicle. So, so we started the vehicle, and everybody like huddled around to look at it, and it appeared to be fine, it was spinning fine and everything. So
yeah, it didn't look off balance. Nope. It didn't look wobbling at all. It looked like it was running really smooth.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, go for a drive.
Yeah, I went and took it for a drive. I went out onto the highway, and I think I took it into like second gear up to like almost rev limiter, status, just to like, how does this thing handle at higher RPMs? And then drove it around. I drove back and forth in front of the house like once or twice, different RPMs, different gears, different speeds, and everything felt fine. Yeah, everything was good. Nice. So yeah, it was that was the party night, right? So we did all the welding and everything, and then threw it on the vehicle to let it cool, and then we went to the party.
The dinner and the raffle,
dinner and raffle, where I won a prize. I won an ARB twin ARB.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
You have more air up tools now.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we'll give it away on another episode of a podcast someday, or maybe I'll sell it or something. I don't know what I'm going to do.
You should sell it. Those things are $600 right now, man.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk off air. We'll see if we can line other things going up. Anyways. Yeah. And then we came back and we buttoned everything together in that evening and drove it around, because that next day I had Rusty Nail, which I really didn't want to miss out on, but I also didn't want to be broken on the trail and be that guy. So I wanted to make sure everything was right before we took off.
Yep.
But everything felt fine, drove great. And as you know, I went and ran Rusty Nail and made it back and no problems, and put it on the trailer and drove it home. I drove it to take it off the trailer and parked it in front of the shop, and haven't ordered anything for it yet, but I'm going to get a whole new harmonic balancing assembly thing, if that's what it's called. And then probably I'm going to get a new cover, and I think the front main seal is behind that cover. So it's right behind the pulley. Yeah. Well, in that cover, right? That the pulley was grinding into. Yeah, but you don't need to remove the cover to put the main seal in. Oh, no. Yep. Well, I've got to remove the cover, and if there's something behind that cover, I'm got to do that. And meanwhile, when I pull that cover off, I'm probably going to have to do an oil change. So there's a few little small things that I'm going to have to do on Bobcat to get it ready for, which I think my next main event is going to be Rubathon. Yeah. Yep. I was looking at it too. Brian, tour guide Taco, messaged us and was like, "Hey, when's the next wheeling trip?" And I was looking, I was like, "Yeah, I don't have anything planned until Rubathon as well." So hopefully we can get the Forerunner done. And the suspension and axles all on. The batteries are going to have to go get redone again to get it up and running for cruise for Rubathon. Sorry. And I'm going to need a front bumper too. So I'm not going to have a front bumper being put on again after the suspension axles, because I'm having the whole front section of my frame redone from firewall forward. So I'll need to find a way to make a new bumper, at least have a winch on there for Rubathon. I may not have a bumper, but I'll need to have a winch. So sure. Or I'll just be like you. You've gone on the Rubicon how many times without a winch now? Yeah. And been just fine. So I don't know how many times. A lot of times. Yeah. So anyways, that was fun. Friday night was just dinner and raffle. You won a prize. I got to give a little speech for Marlin, which was kind of nice to be able to kind of have the honor to do. Yeah, I think the whole trip for Cruise Moab was great. I think our tonal carnage came out to Lee blew an EFI fuse, and that's right. You separated your pulley on your crankshaft. So which really we didn't cause anything to self-destruct this year on any of the runs, which was nice. Yeah, definitely. Will also won a prize at the ceremony party. Oh, nice. I forgot what it was. I think it was a gift certificate to somebody. And we didn't talk about Will a whole lot, but Will was crashing at our pad that Tyler got an Airbnb, and a bunch of us stayed there. And Will was one of those guys. He is a Bay Area guy, an AD guy, and he runs Apollo 9 Motorsports. Yeah. Yep. So he was fun to hang out with and kind of get to know a little bit better throughout the week as well. Yeah. So all in all, awesome trip for 2023 for Moab. I was out there on that trip for like 10 days, which was interesting. I don't know if I've gone on a quote unquote overlanding trip for that long, but I mean, we had a house for half of it, and a washing machine and dryer, which I wasn't counting on, but it was nice to have anyways. So fun trip. Yeah, all in all, it was a good trip. Driving home was uneventful. I think all of it, you guys left a half an hour-ish before Lee and I cruised together. We made some good time. Something small that maybe happened on the way home is I still occasionally was getting the vibration. Really? Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And I stopped, and now that I know what to look for in the tires, I kept every time we stopped, I'd look at my tires and be like, I don't see anything. So I'm wondering if the vibration caused some issue with the bearings, and there was a certain speed or wind direction or something that would cause me to have this weird vibration continuing on, because the tires were brand new. right? So there shouldn't have been a wheel vibration tire, and it was the exact same. It was happening, like 70 to 65 to 70 miles an hour, maybe 65, 75 miles an hour, getting that weird vibration happening again. For only short stints though. So I'm kind of, I think it's a bearing issue, and I'm definitely going to go dive in and look at those bearings on the trailer.
Yeah. Interesting. Did you, notice any excess heat on any of the wheels? Like,
not necessarily. So on the way back, I was playing a lot with those TPMS sensors that we both got for the trailer. And I was I ran them on the trailer like 3/4 of the way home. And then I ran them on Clifford, like the last quarter of the way home, just to see how Clifford was doing. And everything was more or less within, like, at max. I think one thing was 8 PSI higher than any of the passenger side rear tire or front tire was 8 PSI higher than any of the other tires. But all the temperatures were always within like 5 degrees of each other. And I don't know how well the tire heat sensor thing works.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I was wondering too.
Gaining the heat from inside the tire, but it's going down the valve stem and into that thing, the sensor. So, but it's got to go down the valve stem, which is spinning around at a high speed, which is probably a cooling effect.
Heat sink, yep.
And then there's some centrifugal force keeping things out. So I don't know how often air is getting down into it, right? Even though it's one unit, but I'm sure the hotter molecules are on the outside and the cooler molecules are on the inside. So I don't know. I don't know if that's even a thing, but all of them were at a similar temperature. But I did notice that the two tires that were facing the sun for the vast majority of the time were higher than the ones that were on the other side.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But nothing to draw alarms. Like there was no, that those sensors did not throw any red flags like that one axle, that side is the issue.
Yeah. So I know when we recalibrated your TPMS device, that one of the sensors wasn't coming up. Did you end up did it end up coming up?
Yeah, all four were there at periods of time. For some reason, the left side would eventually disappear. Like the left side rear and left side front would not show up.
Interesting.
And then whenever I stop, it all sync up again. And then at some point the left side would disappear, and then they'd go. And then when I'd stop for food or gas or, whatever, everything showed up again. However, though, I think it's a distance issue because I never had that problem when I was running all of them on Clifford.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'm curious. I kind of got that little device. It was only like $20 on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I really got it to kind of run an experiment and see if it would work, if I would like having it kind of thing, if I found value in having it. And now that I have one, I'm like, that actually works pretty well if it worked better. So I think I want to try and look for like a higher quality one that maybe I agree. I think it's a connection range issue that those little sensors just can't put out enough power to get the radio signal to the receiver. So I want to see if I can find some better ones with a little bit better range on them.
Yeah, I posted a thing on Instagram about it and I was like, this is really cool. I can keep track of my wheels, and I had a few people reach out asking me what it was. I had one person reach out and say, those are cool. Don't buy the cheap one because they really don't last that long. Get a more expensive one and they'd last. And then I was talking to somebody else and they make 4, 6s and 8s. So you can have one that has one unit that has all of your tires for your vehicle and trailer, and for you and your trailer, you only needed a 6. But if you're going to, use your tow trailer, you want 8, and then it's just one unit that reads them all. Yeah. So I think that this was a great entry level, it was like $23 or something like that. It was fine to, test with and play with. And I do think that there would be a more advantage or better advantage to get a higher level one that can transmit a little farther, probably maybe shows you more stats, but is a better quality for sure. Harry Wagner actually just released a short or a reel or something about the 4 upgrades I need for a trailer, and those TPMS sensors were one of his upgrades.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, awesome, man. Good stuff. Good week. The long episode. So we'll probably end up splitting this into 2 episodes. So you'll probably listening to me talking now on the second day, but fun stuff. Let's do it again next year.
I'm in. I have a blast at this event every year. I think that Brian 17 Offroad is going to have his FJ40 up and running, and that thing's going to be a beast. My goal is to have Samantha up and running, and you're going to have your Forerunner up and running.
I should have it up and running and pretty well dialed in. So,
I spoke to Justin, who did the trail lead of Rusty Nail, and I said, I want to do Pritchett next year.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm in. If that group that does Pritchett, then we're going to have a good time on Pritchett. Justin said Pritchett is a wheelbase game, and longer benefits for longer wheelbases. That's why I'm like, sure. Perfect. I love it.
Yeah. Longer and wider. Yeah. The longer and wider, the more stability you have, because there's just a lot of really interesting climbs on Pritchett. So,
right.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I'm excited for next year. We'll see kind of how the rest of the year goes. Man, I'm looking forward to everything else moving forward. We have, I guess, now 6 more episodes until episode 400.
Yeah.
I don't know
what we're going to do.
I don't either. Oh man. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see if we even do anything. I don't know. I feel like it should be a big milestone, but at the same time, I'm like,
I'm kind of there too. It's like, okay, 100 was fun. 200 was pretty cool. 300 was 400 is gonna be 500 is gonna be cool.
That'll be cool. Yeah.
So we'll maybe do something.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do, you know what we should do? We should do like a listener questions or something. We haven't done one of those in a long, long time. We did talk, I think, a couple episodes ago about trying to do a listener questions episode. So we'll figure it out. We'll talk off air. We'll, if we do a listener questions, we'll post something up. Didn't we do that for, I think we did that.
I think we did it for 300 up at,
no, we did 350 with the assistant and secretary. We had people write in for that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll figure out something small, but something fun for 400.
There we go.
If anybody has an idea, you can always write in to us, Jimmy or Tyler at snailtrail4x4.com. You can find us on Instagram. I'm over at snailtrail4x4. Tyler's over at 4x4 Toyota Tyler. Or you can phone in your idea and we'll play it in an episode maybe on Thursday. And that phone number is area code 916-345-4744.
Sweet. Sounds good to me. Jimmy, Holy Jet, do you have any final words for everybody out there?
Cruise Moab for the win. Such a fun event. And if you ever want to go out and wheel Moab, go to an event out there that is supporting off-road advocacy. Is that a good way to put it?
Yep.
And, and trail runs in a big group like this is a great way to explore Moab.
I agree. And with that, my friends, keep crawling.
I got one for you.
Ready.
I'm not quite sure what HD is, but the doctor said I have 80 of them.
You have 80 HDs?
Yeah, 80 HDs.
Perfect. That's actually like the level of the level of your HD. Level 80.
Level 80.